Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome to the stream. This is going to be probably the last one for a little while. Next week, we have WaveCon, and then Blind Wave is off on a 2-week vacation after that. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on during those 2 weeks, but there might not be streams. This might be the last one for a bit. This is also the first one for a bit, because, let's see, last week some people were sick on Monday at Blind Wave, so we did 300 on that Saturday, which was a good time. That reaction is up now over on Blind Wave Beyond. And then the week before that, I needed a break from the camera. But we are back, and I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to have you back as well. Everything looks like it's working. I see chat. Chat seems to see and hear me, which is always a good time. Pong did not get washed away by the flood, which is good. Another hint hunt has come and gone. But there's going to be a hint hunt at WaveCon, which should be pretty fun, I think. We will see. But yeah, you guys can start putting questions in the chat. I might not get to them immediately, but I should get to them before the end of stream. So go ahead and just start filling them in as we kind of go along. And if I don't get to it as soon as you say it, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I will get to it eventually. But yeah, I was thinking about a lot of different things for this particular stream, but the timing of it, I think it's a good time to look back over this past year, because I would say August 10th of last year is probably when my lowest point started in my life, and it's been a roller coaster since then, but largely an upward trend. And things today are pretty good, I think. I'm looking forward to WaveCon, which is something I certainly would not have been capable of a year ago. If you haven't been following along, a year ago, severely depressed, had some suicidal tendencies, panic disorder, was going crazy, just panic attacks all the time, always thinking about like my health and my body and what was going on. Couldn't go up and down the stairs without having a panic attack because it would like elevate my heart. Agoraphobia was in full swing, couldn't leave the house, couldn't really do anything other than just sort of exist and suffer. But today, I can look forward to WaveCon. I can go outside on walks. I've done bicycle rides. I've done like car trips to places. I've driven myself to places. I've gotten back into exercising. Not exactly quite where I want to be, but it is happening. A lot of the chronic pain issues that I was dealing with have kind of come and gone. I've been doing a lot more research on psychosomatic pain and stuff like that, trying to figure out where these problems with my back have been coming from, getting that checked out by doctors, but also exploring the psychosomatic avenue as well to see what I can discover there. Because that's been a big limiting factor in my happiness recently. But, looking back over the past year, even though I think physically and mentally it was the most trying in my lifetime, I think I can sort of look back, and even though that is the case, there's still a lot of happy memories there. There's still a lot of accomplishments there. It was during that time that the new website launched. Now I'm sort of focused on fulfilling one of my dreams I've had forever of publishing a board game. So I'm taking some real steps towards making that dream a reality, and hopefully hoping to have exciting news about that soon. I've written, I think, the best poetry I've ever written in my life. It's still not the best, but I think I've gotten a lot better at it over the year. I think my level of understanding and acceptance has taken on a whole new level. Just and about a lot of different things, but accepting the sort of idea of death, I think, was something that I really took a big step with last December, and I think that was the key to getting me on my road to recovery. So just sort of being able to accept a lot more and fight less, I think, has been key. Although I do hope to fight a little bit more. Getting back into boxing is something that I would really like to do, and I'm trying to work my way back up to. But we'll see. I have to make sure there isn't actually problems with my back before I start punching the bag again. But it's hard to tell. But yeah, like, I don't wake up every day worrying about what that day is going to be like, what that day is going to bring. I can take days as they come, and I can recover from bad days, which is something that was not a possibility before. I can sort of accept them, take them in stride, and they make way to good days. But it wasn't quick and it wasn't easy. I've gone over most of it already on the channel, but it's a process, and the results are not always immediate. But that doesn't mean that you're not doing the right things. It just takes time. And unfortunately, effort, which when you're in that state is something that you just do not really have. Have you read Healing Back Pain by Dr. Sarno? What's the book I'm reading right now? Actually, who wrote this? Go back. Yes, that's the one I'm reading right now. Healing Back Pain by John E. Sarno. I'm about 22% of the way through it, so just kind of starting, but that is one that I'm checking out, and hopefully that helps, because last week the back pain was just absolutely miserable. It's this sort of all over feeling that just makes me nauseous, and I can't think about anything. I can't do anything. But yeah, I do plan on reading that book, seeing how it affects me, and then doing a in-depth video on it if it was beneficial, which I suspect it will be, but we will see. But yeah, like, you know, looking back, there was a lot of pain, but there's also been a lot of triumph. And I think that having this, like, documenting a lot of this on video, I think is going to help myself in the future, because I can prove to myself that I was in such a dark and low place, but I was still able to get out of it, that there is hope. Hopefully, this can also do that for other people as well. It's kind of the goal of the channel, to help people. Which I've been thinking a lot about, like, you know, dreams and goals and, you know, what it is that I want to accomplish in my life before that life is over. And like I said before, the board game is one of those things. It's something that I've been working on for a very long time, and I've always loved board games, even since I was a kid. Didn't have access to very good ones growing up, but it didn't stop me from enjoying them. Candyland excluded, I guess. But like, there's something so great about being able to introduce a board game to people and to be able to, like, use that as a catalyst to make an enjoyable experience. Because I never felt like I was super good at doing that, just like talking to a person or hang out with a person. Like, I always needed some sort of catalyst between me and that other person, whether it was a video game or watching a show or something like that. But board games have been a particularly good one because it has, like, unlike a video game, whereas a video game, you kind of need to be focused. I mean, it kind of depends on the game, but, you know, I would say the majority of your focus kind of needs to be on the game. And then there's also maybe conversations happening alongside that. Maybe that's just my group and are taking Smash Brothers seriously. But, like, you know, there's the match, and then you might have some light conversations or some quips as that's happening. But with board games, the pacing is usually a lot different. There are timed board games and things like that that are happening in real time, and you kind of need your entire focus. But, you know, there's time to pause with a board game. And there's also wiggle room. Like, there's nothing forcing you to necessarily follow the rules or to play a certain way. You can kind of stretch it if you need to in order for everyone to have fun, because that's the real goal, right? Is that everyone's having fun, unless you're playing competitively or something like that, which certainly happens. But, like, you know, I have all kind of board games that I have written my own house rules for, that I just, in my infinite wisdom, thought that this is a problem with this game, I'm going to fix it. And so you can do that with video games, but it's a lot more effort, and it can be tough to do that and play that game over the internet with friends. But it's always been nice to have, like, a structured event alongside interacting with people for me. And if there's rules for that thing that are written out, even better, because I love rules. But small talk is just, like, I can do it, but it is just, it's like throwing, you know, doing around on the heavy bag while holding your breath. I can do that for a while, but it is way harder than it needs to be, and it leaves me completely dead afterwards. So, like, another activity gives me that breathing room in order to, if I don't have anything to say in that moment, because most people don't seem to just want to sit in silence. There seems to be an aversion to that. You can instead allow the focus to be on something else while I'm sort of catching my breath in order to continue on the conversation or whatever that is. What do you think would help you? I've had severe depression for 10 years, also anxiety, ADHD. It's really difficult. It's difficult to keep going. Having someone to support like a friend or a dog is the thing that helps me wake up in the morning. Well, I've done extensive videos on anxiety and depression here on the channel, also ADHD as well. I don't think there is a single solution that's going to help everyone. I think the first thing to look at is to look at your environment and your life and to see if there's something that's keeping you in this state that you can change. That might be toxic relationships. That might be, for me, a lot of it was not realizing I was autistic and forcing myself into situations that overloaded my sensory aspects or my social aspects, and just sort of gritting my teeth and pushing myself through that until I inevitably broke. And that was just the cycle of my life, where I would, be super successful outwardly, couldn't really tell anything was up. I'll just sort of grit my teeth and go through until at a point I would break completely and then sort of withdraw from society for an extended period of time. And then I would just sort of repeat that process. But over the past few years, I've realized a lot of my triggers and I can sort of work through them. Or I can cope with them, and the ones that I can't cope with, I can limit or avoid, right? So I think that's part of it. Another big part of it for me is that sort of mind and body connection of being able to continue to build up a level of strength and trust in my mind and body together, normally through exercise. But there's other ways I think you could do that as well. But I've always been at my best when I am putting a significant amount of time and effort in my physical fitness as well as my mental fitness. So I think that's part of it. I think journaling is a big thing, being able to externalize things. Hopefully, in addition to that, some therapy. But if not, I think journaling is the next best thing. Rollpunches.com has a journal that you can start with, but there's other great ones as well. If you said you had ADHD, so there's the Neurodivergent Friendly Workbook of DBT Skills, I think is a pretty solid one. There's tons of other ones out there as well. But even if you don't use the journal over at rollpunches.com, I think the concepts in there are good ones that you can just do on your own. Things like a gratitude journal and stuff like that. But yeah, for me, we don't see the book. Oh, is it? It's just called the Neurodivergent Friendly Workbook of DBT Skills, written and designed by Sunny Jane Wise. But yeah, I guess the NVIDIA is cutting it out. Or here, can I do this? Nope, that's not gonna do it. Haha! I tricked it into thinking it was a face. Where was I? What was I talking about? Stuff. Making sure to continue to foster relationships with people. Maybe trying to focus on ways you can help people has always been something very useful for me. Yeah, like you said, having someone to support like a friend or a dog, I think is something that can definitely help. But I always recommend Claire Week's books. I think they're very useful. That guy in particular, I think, is super useful in anxiety, but it also, I think, helps in depression. And I think, not a doctor, but I think especially in the short term, I think things like anti-anxiety and antidepressant meds can be helpful. I'm less sure about them as long-term solutions, but I don't know if proud is the right word, but this past year, I wanted to be able to recover from this while feeling everything that I can feel. Because for me, the anti-anxiety meds sort of deaden the emotions. And so it was really important for me to find ways to cope and ways to recover while feeling and experiencing everything that I can experience. Because I don't want to be on them for the rest of my life. And I was hoping that I could find a way to be able to cope with those intense feelings. Not on my own is not the right way to say it, but the object wasn't to eliminate anxiety, and the object wasn't to eliminate my feelings. It was to cope with my feelings. And I think that's something that I might have gone or been put on the wrong path as a child, because I was very young, 11 years old, when I was put on anti-anxiety medicines. And I think it would have been better if I had spent those 20 years of being on that medication learning to deal and experience my emotions rather than deadening them. Hey Rick, I appreciate you and all you bring to Blind Wave, especially with your focus on mental health. Want to say I've been dealing with alcoholism and depression since COVID, but as of late I'm winning. Enjoying my morning watching you without a hangover. Well, congratulations. And that's fantastic. My father is an alcoholic. Because of that, I was afraid to even touch alcohol for the longest time. So it's not something that I've personally have had to experience an addiction like that, but it is something that I have witnessed. And I know how difficult it can be. Yes, Jolly. The VODs always stick around, so you never need to catch it live. But yeah, I'm hoping to sort of show off, play my board game a little bit at WaveCon. It's ready to go, pretty much, I think. And it's a good time. I've been trying to design games for forever. And I've come up with a lot of different board game designs, but none of them were very good, I don't think, except for this one so far. I don't want to stop designing things, but I think I have a relatively good feeling on what's good and what's not good. Even when it comes to my own stuff, I think that's sort of a curse in a way, because nothing starts out good, right? So I can find myself discouraged working on a project or something like that and being like, this is terrible, and not being able to convince myself to just keep plugging away at it until it is good. Sometimes I think it would be much better to just be oblivious and just to finish things, and then have someone else, like an editor, tell you, you need to fix this. Interesting to hear people talk about anxiety meds deadening their feelings, since that's not been my experience. I mean, there's tons of different meds and they affect people differently, for sure. I've tried, I've been put on probably close to 90% of them since I was a kid. So I've tried the spectrum, and not all of them deaden my emotions, for sure. But they did often have some pretty nasty side effects, or I just never noticed a difference at all. Can we get an out-of-context spoiler for the board game? So excited to see it. I don't know what that means, out of context. But I can talk about it. Like I said, I've showed it off at conventions before. I've had, different players and board game designers and all kinds of different people play it. It's been something I've worked on for a very long time. What type of board games do you like? I like all kinds of board games. I have a collection of over, I can tell you right now, as a matter of fact. I haven't really been super focused on board games. Sort of a remnant of the Depression, where I just lost a lot of joy in things that I used to love. And it's tough to get people together to play board games, So most of my board gaming has been by myself. Let's see, collection. I have a collection of 551, but that includes expansions. So I don't have necessarily... No, wait. Okay, sorry. Yeah, that number's way too big. This is... I only want owned. That includes other things as well. Okay, so owned is 383. That sounds a little better. Yeah, if you go over to Board Game Geek, my username is Sir Gunblade, and you can see my collection of my ratings and such. But I like all kinds. Like, if you want my favorites of particular genres, I think my favorite war game is probably Hammer of the Scots by Columbia Games, which is about the Scottish War of Independence. William Wallace, Edward Longshanks. For Euro games, it's probably Troyes, which is a worker placement game that's about building the city in the Cathedral of Troyes. That's Troyes. Troyes, I think is how you say it. Don't speak French. But close to that, I also really like Archipelago. But it's one that I have only got to play with people once. Troyes was a few times. If it's a game that I'm going to play with people who don't play a lot of games, I really like Kingdom Builder, which is by the same designer as Dominion. A lot of people didn't like Kingdom Builder, but I think it's fantastic. You need to explain to people and help people out with their first turns sometimes, because your first turns in that game are so important. But the variety that game provides, and just I don't know, it just feels good to put those wooden boards on that box, or on that board, the ever-changing board. For party games, Monikers has always been the biggest hit. I would say. I guess I don't need this anymore. My battery died. But honestly, for party games, I tend to do Jackbox more than the games, just because when I go to places and do that sort of thing, I don't often have a table. But QnA was always a big hit as well, which is a disc flicking game. Maggie made me a wonderful board for that. Rick, I'm a video game design student. Want to make sure stories and experiences are told to players. I wanted to ask how video games can positively impact mental health and well-being. Also, really cool to hear you're a designer, and hope you have a good rest of the day. Yeah, so I took design courses in college. I have worked on a published video game before, and have worked on several unpublished video games. Primarily as a designer, but I also do programming, and I can do everything, just not well, especially not the art. But yeah, when it comes to how games positively impact mental health, I have a whole series on the channel that's called, why can't I remember it? Mind Games? Mind Games. It sounded wrong in my head. It's what I thought it was. Where I go through and talk about, I highlight specific games that I think deal with mental health in positive ways. Certainly for me, video games have been absolutely crucial in my happiness. There's been times in my life where I've gone through panic cycles before I knew what panic attacks even were, and went through a period where I didn't really sleep for 11 days because every time I would start to fall asleep, I would have a panic attack, and like video games got me through that. Specifically Dark Cloud and Killzone, because I would just turn those on and try to distract myself away. Didn't know then what I know now about acceptance and Claire Week's method and all that stuff. But it did get me through. But yeah, that's awesome. I love designing games. It's been something I've been doing forever. I got a copy of RPG Maker for the PS1 from GameStop as a sort of teenager. So that was sort of my first foray into making games, and then started, before I had a computer with internet at my house, I would download Game Maker from the school and bring it home and read the manual and stuff, and Aaron and I put together a collection of games that we sold as a fundraiser for the school. I don't remember what the fundraiser in particular was for, but I was trying to find, because one of the things that I thought about talking about today was what I consider to be my greatest professional failure, and that is in the game design realm. And I wanted to show off some of the different games that I've worked on over the years, but I couldn't find those games I made as a kid. I know they exist. I have all the hard drives for my old computers, so I just need to find which one it's on, I think. I thought I had it in the cloud, but I couldn't find it. I spent a couple hours looking. But once I round those up, I will sort of talk about that and talk about my game design journey in a way. Thank you for the sub. Mertz. This name makes no sense to me. Mert Soy Lemez? I tried. Stretch! I can do that. I need it. I haven't done my yogi yet today. Yoga, not my yogi. Oh, hello, Christian. Yeah, I'm Turkish. Thanks for trying anyway. Yeah, I'm very bad at reading, like knowing how to pronounce things by reading them. I never had phonics or anything like that as a kid, so it's always just been memorization. which isn't good as a poet. There's something else I've been focused a lot on poetry lately, and I thought it might be a fun idea to maybe organize like a poetry reading on Discord where people could bring their own poems or just like bring whatever poems sort of speak to them that are written by other people and have like a reading or something like that. I've actually never had an opportunity to go to one, so I'm not sure how they're usually formatted, but I have some ideas. I think that could be fun. When you design a game, how do you get to the game mechanics that make sense to the concept? So it kind of depends. Like sometimes I have a mechanic that I think is really cool, and then I build a game around that. Other times I have a theme that I think is really cool, and then I try to make mechanics that suit it. I think both can work. I think having that cool mechanic, in my experience, has made usually an easier journey because I have a core something that works, and I'm not trying to make something to fit a cool concept that I have. Because cool concepts, I think, are easy, but fun mechanics, I think, are more rare. Unless you're just taking something from somewhere else, which I think is fine. That's, has been video games forever, right? Before they were called first-person shooters, they were called Doom-likes. Because Doom did it, and then everybody copied it. But yeah, it just kind of depends. Like, I usually always design something that's going to be fun for me, but I also consider audiences as well. So like for my board game, for example, I like a range of board games, but some of my favorite ones are very complex, right? Some of my war games, like a single battle might take 11 to 15 hours with, hundreds of counters and hundreds of pages of rules. But for the board game that I designed, I wanted it to be something that I could play with my family, that I could play with people who weren't necessarily into board games. That could be a good introduction. But I also wanted it to appeal to people like me who like a little bit more of that depth, that like exciting themes, that like interesting mechanics with interesting decisions. I have played It Takes Two. There are a lot of fun mechanics in that game, for sure. And I love when mechanics meet theme. I think The Missing, J.J. McField and the Island of Memories by Swery is one of the best examples of that, where it has this very interesting puzzle-solving mechanic that completely meshes with the theme. It feels like it's all one thing, which I think is tremendous. Whereas you have something like Doom Eternal, which I love Doom Eternal. It is probably my top or my second favorite first-person shooter of all time. But I'm not sure that I don't know if I want to call it tactical, but like the nature of that combat, I don't think meshes super well with the world and the story. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but it still doesn't stop it from being one of my favorite games of all time. But yeah, like, when you talk about games that utilize mechanics in awesome ways, I don't think I covered Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons in Mind Games yet, but I probably will if I ever come back to that at some point in the future. But the way that it gives players a moment, a narrative moment using gameplay that you can't get from TV or from movies or from books. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core does that with its ending, where it just merges those things in a way that's incredible. I think Hideo Kojima is very good at that. But I do think it's kind of rare. Let's see. Thanks. I'm starting from the concept and trying to design around that. It's a challenge for sure. Yeah, definitely. And like, just expose yourself to as many video games as you can. Like, if you're a writer, you should read everything you can. If you're a photographer, you should look at photographs. Like, if you're a game designer, you should play all kinds of games. When I thought that might be my profession, like, I went and played games I had no interest in. I had no interest in World of Warcraft, but I knew it was hugely popular, and I wanted to understand why. And, like, you know, this idea of a game that people would spend money on every month was crazy to me. So I wanted to understand why. So I got it, and I played it, and I understood. Even if it was outside my genre of things that I enjoyed, it was something that I needed in my toolbox in order to make what I wanted to make. Because even if I'm not a big fan of MMOs, there might be something in there that I am a fan of. And maybe I can take that thing and put it in a different genre that I do enjoy. And there's probably other people out there who are like me who would enjoy that thing but don't enjoy MMOs, right? I was making a class-based team, first-person mostly arena shooter where all the players were mechs. And this was years and years ago. This was before Team Fortress 2. And I was designing a mechanic in that utilized the golf swing from Mario Golf. You know, it's just completely different genres, but I thought the mechanic here was interesting and engaging, and I thought it could be applied to this other genre. You can find Mind Games over at Roll with the Punches. That's ROLE with the Punches. YouTube channel where you can subscribe for more mental health talks like this, and also physical health as well. There's a lot of really good boxing tutorials over there, I think. I hope to start to get back into the physical stuff a little more, but there's a lot of really good physical stuff over there too. But yeah, like, game design is just fun. And I think it's always important to be able to, like, make sure that you're making something that you would want to play, I think. Especially if it's a project that you're sort of doing on your own, or you're the head of, or something like that. Like, you know, if you're a hired gun and you're programming for something, then you kind of do what you're told. But if it's something that you are making, then you shouldn't put too much thought, I think, into what's popular, what's going to sell. It's, what do I love? Because you're probably not the only one that feels that way. But what do I know? I haven't sold a multi-million copy game or anything like that. These days, I mainly just do it for hobby's sake. But yeah, Maggie and I played It Takes Two together. Trying to think of other games like that. I certainly preferred playing Kalimba with her. That was just so much fun. I think It Takes Two has a lot of cool ideas. Man, it's been a while since I played that. There was something that didn't really sit super well with me about it. I think it was narratively, but it's been too long since I played it. I can't really remember all the beats or anything like that. But yeah, there's just something special about games, I think. Lecture on game design I like very much is Failing to Fail, the Spiderweb software way. I'll have to check that one out. I quite like, there's a lot of GDC talks that I enjoy. Tim Schafer's done a few that I've listened to several times. That behind the scenes documentary on the Double Fine documentaries are very cool. I don't think I've seen Failing to Fail, but I have seen a lot of different GDC lectures for sure. Hi George. Hi Axios. I definitely prefer single player, mainly because I use video games as a way to sort of reset myself, to add energy back into me, and talking to people tends to drain that. There are a few exceptions, and like I said, if it's centered around a game, it doesn't bother me as much. But even then, like, having a conversation while playing a multiplayer game kind of drains me. So I do tend to prefer single player experiences, and I also just like to experiencing things at my own pace, and just it's similar to how I like to explore movies and TV shows when I'm not watching them for Blind Wave, where like I'll just pause it and just think about it for an hour or something like that after I see a particularly powerful scene or something. Give my brain a chance to process it before I sort of move on. Am I excited for the new Dragon Ball game? I'm somewhat. I usually don't super get into fighting games outside of Smash Brothers, but I have played, all of the major ones over the years, mainly just like doing the campaigns or something like that. I did play Dragon Ball FighterZ or Fighter Z. Never sure exactly how to say it. I did definitely have some fun with that. So yeah, I would probably check it out. And I know Eric enjoyed those games growing up, which I never actually played any Dragon Ball Fighter game, I don't think, before FighterZ. I think I played one on the DS, but I can't remember exactly what it was. So it's kind of a new avenue for me, and I know they're very well loved, so I'm excited to see why. I hope this is a good one. Tenkaichi? Is that what it's called? That series? Dragon. It's another one of those things where I've read it, but I don't know how to say it. Tenkaichi, maybe? Budokai Tenkaichi. Sounds about right. I talked before about like when you're designing things to open yourself up to things outside of genres that you normally enjoy. I do not like Minecraft, but I've almost finally beaten Dragon Quest Builders 2, which I've really enjoyed. It's overstayed its welcome for me. It's so long. But I like having the blueprint system in that, where it sort of gives you the outline of what to build, and then you build the thing. And that's really cool. And having like quests around building things and a storyline, I've really enjoyed that game, despite very much disliking games like that. Minecraft, Terraria, that sort of thing. So like sometimes it's just about adding in those elements. I'm also making my way through the Yakuza games, which is always exciting and a good time. I think I'm getting close to beating Yakuza 3, I think. I really want to catch up to Like a Dragon, but I've still got many more Yakuzas to go. And I keep telling myself, I'm not going to 100% this one. I'm just going to get through the main story so I can get going. And then it just never happens. I just do all the side quests. I might not 100% them. Especially probably not going to 100% Yakuza 3 because the Hostess Club minigame in that is terrible. It's so bad. I can't bring myself to push through it. And I don't think the Hostess Club games and the one before this have been great, but I was able to push myself through those. But this one, I don't think I could do it. I played the first Life is Strange, and I love it. I haven't played any of the others. I definitely want to. Hasn't been a good reason I haven't. I heard mixed reviews of whatever the one that came out after Life is Strange was, and it kind of scared me off. But I still want to go through and do it. And I am excited for the new one. We saw the trailer for that, and that looks awesome. Life is Strange does do one thing I'm not sure about how I feel. I think it's very interesting. So there's some slight Life is Strange spoilers for the next, 10 minutes or so, I guess. But so in Life is Strange, there is a scene where one of the characters is going to commit suicide. And so your choices in the game can affect whether or not that happens. And I think I'm conflicted. Part of me thinks that is very interesting, that it's an interesting way of having agency for the player, that I am on the side of players should be able to affect the story in games, because otherwise why aren't you just watching a movie or reading a book or something like that? But in that particular instance, I do also think that like games are a form of art, and art can say things and it can influence people. And I think that the message that your actions are guaranteed to affect whether or not someone else commits suicide, I think might be a harmful message. I certainly think that there are things that you can do that might affect that, but I don't think that it is always necessarily like on another person or another person was responsible for that thing. So I think there's like, I have mixed feelings about how I feel about that moment. But like good art, it does make me question those things. And it, you know, I've thought very deeply about that game and about that scene in particular, and how I feel about it and how I would have handled it if I was the one making that game. But Life is Strange is quite good. At some point, maybe, I don't know if anyone would be interested, but I have been working for years on compiling every single game that I've ever played. So I have a giant spreadsheet that has games that I've played, and then there's columns of if I've beaten that game, like what I rate it and stuff like that. And like at some point, I want to go through and be like, you know, this is the top incredible number of games of all time. You know, the top 10,000 or something like that. I can't even get to it now. I don't want docs, I want sheets. There it is. Currently playing through the most recent one on the list here, RoboCop Rogue City for the PS5, which is a mixed feeling sort of thing again. I think the like the world and all that feels very right. The story's been kind of whatever so far. The character of RoboCop feels pretty good. The action, it's satisfying, but it's very like light gun level. You know, there's not a lot of depth to it. So I'm not sure that that one's going to carry me through to the end. It might. How many video games have I played to date? I think the number is 1,142. That seems low to me, but that's what this is at. And I haven't been able to think of any others as of yet, although I will be watching like a YouTube video, you know, about something and realize, oh, I played that game. Let's add it to the list. That definitely does happen. I've not played What Remains of Edith Finch. It's definitely on my list, and I've owned it forever. I just have never gotten a chance to do it yet. But that's not games beaten. That's just games played. My criteria is playing it enough to form an opinion about it. So like, if I put 1 quarter in an arcade machine and play that game once, I guess it kind of depends on the game. That might not put it on the list. But, you know, if I spend a couple hours playing, like, shoot, what's that game called? Virtua on? I think it has Virtua in the title, and it's about fighting mechs. It's a fighting game. I can't find it. It's in here somewhere. I can't remember what it's called. In Yakuza 3, you can play it in the arcade, I think. I think it's Yakuza 3. So it must be a Sega game, whatever it is. But like, I never obviously own that arcade machine or anything, but it was at the local bowling alley. And so I put in several sessions on it. And recently I got to play it a lot more via Yakuza. No, it's not Virtua Fighter. I want to say it's ON in the title, ON. I've played Sly Cooper. I've played 1, 2, and 3. Because 3 was in 3D, right? So all the PS2 ones. Actually, I also played the most recent one. I'm not sure if I finished it, though. But yes, I enjoyed those growing up. It's not my favorite... it's not like my favorite series or anything, but I enjoyed it enough to play 3 of them. 4, 3.5. I've not revisited Cyberpunk. There's too many games I haven't played. Right? Like, why would I go back to a game that at its core I did not like when I could play Life is Strange 2? Now, I understand that it's changed a lot. Seemingly, it's changed even at the core. But there's just too many other games. It burnt that bridge. Never beat Final Fantasy 15, but got 20 hours into it, didn't enjoy it. I still classify that as playing enough to formulate an opinion. I agree. For me, it's Final Fantasy 13. I played maybe 25 hours. I played I got to just before where people say that game gets good when it goes open world. I just couldn't do it anymore, and I never went back. Final Fantasy IX is another one that I feel like everything about it I should love, but I have tried to start and finish that game. I think this is the 4th time, and I just can't do it. I don't know what it is. There's something about it that I just doesn't grab me. Like the narrative, the characters, the gameplay's fine. I mean, it's kind of your basic Final Fantasy stuff, but I've not played No Man's Sky. I'm normally not a big open world guy. I like constructed, designed experiences. There's been exceptions, but largely that's what I like. For Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm probably going to wait until the last part of the trilogy comes out before I play it. Because I'm not going to replay Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I kind of want to be able to go from this one into the next one relatively fresh. Tekken. So I don't like Tekken like I like Smash Brothers. Like, I've never been to Tekken tournaments or anything like that. But I've enjoyed playing Tekken through the story modes. I don't think I've ever played against anyone in Tekken. Growing up, Aaron was really the only one that I played any sort of fighting games with. I don't think we ever played Tekken. But I had Tekken 3, which I enjoyed quite a bit. And I've played Tekken. I played one of the Tekken tag teams. I can't tell you which one. Probably the first one, but maybe the second one. Yeah, I finished Death Stranding on stream. Why won't Steam open up? Actually, no. I wouldn't have Tekken on Steam. I'd have Virtua Fighter on Steam. So I think I've only played Tekken 3 and then one of the tag teams. Probably the first one. Actually, it should be on my list. You know what? So this is why I have a list. No, I don't want Steam now. Now you come. Tekken. No, not Tekken. Tekken? Is Tekken not on my list? If I found new ones to add to the list? I found that impossible to believe that I did not put Tekken on this list. Tekken is TEK, right? So it would be between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Fall of the Foot Clan, and Temple Run. Well, happy day. We've found new ones. Definitely played Tekken 3. And I'm pretty sure it was Tekken Tag Team. I've not played Baldur's Gate 3. It's on the list. I knew that one was going to be a hefty commitment. Is there any game you'd say you loved way more when you revisited it or had a change of heart on? Interesting. I would say Gargoyle's Quest for the NES. I had that as a kid. I think I'd inherited it from my uncles. And it didn't jive with me as a kid. I never really put a lot of time into it. It might have been too difficult. I don't remember. But going back, playing that game, I enjoy it a lot more. And I sought out the sequel. I think it's called Firebrand for the SNES when it came out on Switch Online. That game is fantastic. Fantastic. Actually, Chained Together isn't on the list. You know what? It should probably go on the list. You've just made the list. Is there any game you wish you could play again for the first time? No, I don't think so. I'm not a big, do for the first time again kind of guy. I always appreciate things more the more time it has to percolate in my mind and the more times that I've watched it. Although, I did get to experience Metal Gear Solid 3 for the first time twice. Because I was horribly sick the first time I played it with a high fever. Marathon the whole thing through that feverish weekend. And once that fever was gone, didn't remember a damn thing about that game. And got to play it again. Do not recommend, by the way. But any other games I loved way more revisiting them or had a change of heart later on. I'm trying to think if there's any games that I played and then played again with Evie and had a different experience because of that. I can't think of any that I played and then played with her, but I probably would not have finished Cat's Quest 2 if I had played that on my own. But playing that with her is one of my most treasured memories. And I'm so happy that we were able to do that together. It was hilarious. But I'd never played Cat's Quest before that time. So, do I think a Tekken movie from the director of The Raid could work? I think so. I mean, Tekken is crazy. Most of those fighting game stories are just so crazy. Like how close would you stick? I don't think I've seen any of the Tekken animated films. I'm trying to think. I've seen bits and pieces, but I don't think I've ever watched one. I should though. That's why you needed to rewatch the prequel. The Star Wars prequels? I think I'm almost guaranteed to hate them even more because I saw what they could have done with Star Wars The Clone Wars. I saw the good bits of those stories. I saw them done well. But we'll see. I haven't watched them in, a decade at least. Control is on my list to play. I have not touched it yet. I do own it. Really like Resident Evil 4 when I played it on my own, but I had so much more fun when I played it with my boyfriend. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Man, I know I I'm trying to remember now. I played it with Calvin to completion. I'm trying to remember if I played it before that or not. I probably did, but I don't remember. I think Evie would have a good time playing that through that together. We played through Resident Evil Revelations 2. I think she would like RE5. Yeah, so if you didn't enjoy The Witcher 1, I think Witcher 3 is certainly something you could enjoy. I enjoyed all the Witchers, but 3 is on a whole nother level, for sure. Out of all the story games you played, is there one game story that popped out to you more than the others? I mean, there's so many. Like the story itself, Ever 17 Out of Infinity, I think it's a visual novel, so it's basically all just story. But I was just astounded by that story when I played that for the first time. And that's been many, many years since I played that. And I've experienced a lot of great stories and games before that, but that ending in particular just really kind of blew me away. So that's certainly one that comes to mind. I think the missing J.J. McField and the Isles of Memories story is amazing. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Metal Gear Solid 1 through 3 in particular. I dove deep into those stories and tried to put all the pieces together and talked about them on online forums and all that stuff. I haven't played Age of Empires 4. I own it. I love 2. I think I would like it, but I have not. DMC 2 is because I loved Devil May Cry, and I loved Devil May Cry 3, and I put DMC 2 off for the longest time because I read the reviews and it just was panned as terrible. And I did eventually decide to give it a try, and I played it, and man, it lives up to its reputation. I agree, I think it's really tough to have so bad it's good games because you have to play them, and they tend to be a lot longer than movies. Devil May Cry 2 might be one of those. I think I would enjoy it more now that I'm a little more separated from my rabid fandom of Devil May Cry. If I could kind of look at it the same way I look at Alien 3, where I separate it from the series, I think I might be able to enjoy it a little more as a so bad it's good kind of game. I think the Earth Defense Force games kind of fall into that as well, where the core mechanics are fine and fun. Everything around it is just so crazy and insane and low rent in a good way. I think my favorite horror game, it's cliche, but I think it's Silent Hill 2. The character work in that game, the storytelling is just so good. The atmosphere, the music. I think the puzzles are very good, but those other things I listed before are just amazing. But any other so bad they're good games? I mean, I played Vampire Rain on the PS3, which is just one of the worst things I've ever played. But hilariously bad, but also you had to pay money for it. I certainly wouldn't recommend. I think a lot of people classify Deadly Premonition as a bad game, and I think the ports don't do any justice. But if you can play that game on the 360, I think it has the Guinness Book of World Records for the most divisive video game. Because some people give it a 10 and some people give it a 1. I'm on the 10 side of things. I think that game is absolutely incredible. But the gameplay of that game, like the combat and stuff like that, is certainly not its strong point. Its strong point is its vibe and its world and its characters and its storytelling. The actual game parts of it, there's a lot of... I don't want to say slapdashness, but it's not its strength. That's why I've been pushing forever, because I think that game would be a fantastic reaction. So I've wanted to play Deadly Premonition for the guys and have them react to the game. Because I don't think any of them would be able to play it through to completion. I just don't think it's their kind of game. But I think they would appreciate the story as much as I do. Is Bloodborne a horror game? It's horror themed. Like Doom is a horror themed game, I think. But other than Doom 3, I don't think the Doom games are horror games, I would say. Maybe if you're playing on Nightmare difficulty. Whew. That's a scary time. Said you were more focused on board game design. Are you still into video game design? Have any intention with going back with a new design project for a personal project? Yeah, I've been working for a while on a project for that might see the light of day sometime. It's tough to do everything myself because I definitely lack in the art department of that. And if I bring other people on, then the time/cost might not justify the returns. Is kind of where I've been at. But I think it will happen at some point. Some kind of game that comes out of Blind Wave. But Scream Stream it's right around the corner. So I need to figure out what new horror game I'm going to play. Can't wait for fall. It's been hot here in Ohio for sure. Definitely looking forward to some cooler weather. That's the thing I'm most maybe concerned about for WaveCon is going to be the heat. I mean, most things are going to be indoors, but I wonder what the temperature is going to be like during WaveCon here. Let's see. Looks like thunderstorms during WaveCon and in the mid 80s. Hopefully we don't lose power. Wouldn't that be a thing? So a long time ago on Blind Wave, we did a top 10s game list, each of us. I think all those games on that list are still way up there for me. I would need to go back and watch it, I guess, to know for sure what I might drop off and bring on. But like Civ 5 has got to be on that list. As I've just put so many hours into Civilization, and 5 I think is my favorite of the ones that I've played. I love history, and I love exploring history in that game. Love the mechanics. There's some incredible mods for that as well that just expand it in some crazy ways. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has got to be on the list. It's one of the things that formed Blind Wave. Our love for that game. It's what caused us to spend so much time together, and it's the only game that I've competed with in, like, you know, big tournament settings. Which we'll be having some Smash Bros. Ultimate at WaveCon, which I'm very excited for. So those have got to be on there. For like the classic, like NES era, which was my first console, probably Mega Man 2, but just the Mega Man series, especially if you let me squeeze things in like Legends or Battle Network. But those are probably the games that I played the most as a kid, just those Mega Man games. I watched the show as a kid and just absolutely loved Mega Man. Metal Gear Solid series, if I had to pick one, I would say the first one, because the first one is what inspired me to get into making games, which got me into programming and kind of got me into computers and web design and all that stuff. Just absolutely rocked my world when I played it for the first time. Just sat there in awe reading those credits and realizing for the first time that people made these games, and maybe I could be one of those people. So that was on there for sure. Dragon Quest VIII would definitely be on there. I love JRPGs. I love Final Fantasy VII. I really enjoyed Dragon Quest XI. I love the Persona games, but if I had to pick one, I think it would be Dragon Quest VIII. It's such a magical experience. It is one of those games that can bring me back to the feelings I had playing games as a kid. And it's one of the first games that I played through together with Maggie. And that's an experience that will be with me forever. Being able to share my love of those kind of games with the woman that I loved. So that's definitely way up there. Although the Persona games are so great, and I might put them on my top 10. I'm not sure. What am I up to? 4? Let's see. What else would I do? I can look at my list and tell you what I've rated perfect. There's quite a few 5s. Just tell you the games that I've rated 5s so far. Out of 5. So we have A Dark Room, particularly the iOS version. That's a fantastic dystopian, largely text-based game. But I played that right after I played The Last of Us. And I think that A Dark Room does what The Last of Us tried to do. With a millionth of the budget. The vibe, the feel of that game, the world that it creates, the story that it tells more implicitly than like out loud is just incredible. Age of Empires 2, absolutely love. Played that game a ton as a kid. It's one of the first games I ever played online. Anchorhead is a text-based adventure game about, it's a Lovecraftian story. Probably my favorite text adventure game, but I'm not sure. Batman Arkham Asylum, I thought was fantastic. I didn't think the story was necessarily the best, but I think it's the best Batman game. I think there's no fat in that game. Just amazing stealth and action with incredible voice acting. The combat of that game changed 3D action games and led to a ton of other games that I loved using that combat system. There was an online game that I used to play called Battlescope that I'm sure no one's ever heard of. It was a tick-based multiplayer online Space 4X game that Aaron and I played. I also did some like design work on it. At a certain point, I got access to the tools. The developer gave me access, and I would make quests for players and things. So an early game design part as well. Burnout Paradise is a 5. I don't like racing games. Burnout Paradise is the one exception, if you don't count kart racing games. I wrote here, a game so good it goes beyond genre taste. Just incredible. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare 1 and 2, I write 5. I played those a ton online. I really loved the single player experiences for those as well. Modern Warfare just changed the genre. It changed gaming. I don't like most of those games now, and the changes that those games led to. But those first two I really enjoyed. And I really liked World at War as well. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, I think, is probably still the pinnacle of the Metroidvania design. Just the art was so haunting, as was the music. It was one of the first like video game soundtracks that I sought out and would just listen to all the time. The gameplay is so good, and it's not afraid to let you just break it and become just super powerful. Like it's very empowering to the player, I think, in a way that Castlevania games before that weren't really. Like they were very anti-player in a way, I felt like. And Symphony of the Night showed that you can let players use their wits in order to make themselves powerful for the game and still have a good time. Chrono Trigger is just a fantastic RPG, a JRPG, multiple endings, super memorable characters, maybe the best soundtrack in video games. It's certainly way up there. I played it way after it actually came out because I never owned a SNES, so I played it on the PS1, which had terrific load times, and it still was one of my favorite gaming experiences ever. Civ 5 I talked about. Contra and Contra 4 and Contra Shattered Soldier. Other than Mega Man, Contra was probably my favorite franchise like growing up. I just loved that run and gun action. I loved the challenge of it. The first Contra was like the first time I really challenged myself in a game. I challenged myself to beat that game without getting hit. So it just sort of it took my my gaming skills to another level, I guess, and it allowed me to enjoy a lot more after that. Contradiction, the all video murder mystery game, is an FMV game, which I love FMV games, but it's a fantastic murder mystery that, if you ask me the one game I want a sequel to, it's probably that one. It's just absolutely fantastic. I love it. Crash Team Racing, again, not a huge racing fan, but really loved that one. It clicked with me, that drifting turbo way of zipping around the map that Mario Kart never really clicked with me for. You had the ability in multiplayer to turn off weapons, so you could turn off the blue shells and stuff like that. Day of the Tentacle, another fantastic point-and-click adventure game. So clever with the multiple protagonists and different time periods. Just a wonder of writing and design. Devil May Cry 3, probably the pinnacle of the action genre, of the character action genre. I still don't think it's been topped, at least not of anything that I've played. You know, it's super cheesy in terms of like its vibe and its story a lot of times, but I think it has a better story than a lot of people give it credit for. But the gameplay and the action is just absolutely incredible. I don't think it's ever been topped. Doom and Doom Eternal. I think, it's hard to overstate Doom's importance to video games, and I still go back and play it and just have an incredible time. Like, it's so fast, it's so specific in what it's trying to achieve, and it achieves it wonderfully. Like, there's no fat in that game. The pacing and the encounter design and the puzzles, it just all works. And I would say similar things about Doom Eternal. Double Dragon Neon, probably my favorite beat 'em up game. I love the humor and the vibe. I love the what's the name of the mechanic? Glam, where you duck and then get super powered up. I love countering in games, so that sort of feels like that. And I love Double Dragon Neon. Dragon Quest VIII, I talked about. Dust and Elysian Tale, I think, is an extraordinary achievement of a singular vision. Ooh, I scrolled back up. Because that game was made by one person. Where are we? Dust. And I think it's one of my top Metroidvanias. Like, it's a gorgeous game. The music is gorgeous. The story is simple but timeless. I really like moving around that world. I like the combat in it. It's just incredible. Dwarf Fortress is another one of those that, like, for modern games, I think you would be hard to overstate its significance in terms of its impact on, Minecraft and survival games and procedural games. I don't like a lot of things that it inspired or spawned, but the original is just, and again, it's another one that was largely a one-person creation. Like, endless number of stories that can be told in that game. Final Fantasy Tactics 7 and 8 are my three favorite Final Fantasies. Those stories meant a lot to me as a kid growing up. Looking back on them, there's definitely a lot of melodrama there. But, like, those characters and those stories during that time just felt like the most important thing in the world to me. And even now, I still really tear up thinking about some of those different story moments in those games. And I absolutely love the gameplay. I love turn-based combat. I think 7's active time battle is up there for me with a pinnacle in the genre. I liked the drawing system in 8, where you, like, draw power from enemies. I know a lot of people didn't like that, but I enjoyed it. Gabriel Knight 2, The Beast Within, another FMV point-and-click adventure game. I love how it mixes history and fantasy. I really enjoy the performances. Yeah, they're a little cheesy sometimes, but it felt like playing a movie. And I didn't get that outside of, like, Metal Gear Solid, which looked very different than Gabriel Knight 2 did. Another game with incredible music, some really solid puzzle design. God of War 2, I think, is probably my favorite God of War game, although I quite like God of War 4 as well. I have that listed as a 5 here. My only downside with God of War 2 is losing all your progress in the first guy. Losing all your progress from the first game feels like a bad design crutch. But after that, it just was just such an incredible game. Hades as well, even though I didn't actually beat it 10 times in order to get the true ending. I have beaten it 5 or 6 times, which is pretty good for video games for me. And like, again, a pretty small team made a very memorable experience that was different every time you went into it, but had this consistency in its narrative throughout those runs that really tied the roguelike genre together in a way that I super enjoyed. I wasn't the biggest fan of roguelikes or lights before that, but having that interconnective narrative tissue really brought it all together for me. Half-Life 2 in 2 Episode 1 and 2. I mean, what can you say? It's one of the greatest designed games in all video games. It's been talked about to death. If it's not contradiction, then it's Half-Life 2 Episode 3 is probably what I want the most. Hot Shots Golf Open T for the PSP, my favorite golf game. And I've played a few golf games. I don't know what it is about golf games that I like so much, because I don't really like other sports games, but I put so many hours into Hot Shots Golf Open T. The unlockable system in that really drove me forward to where you kept getting these new characters and these new courses, and like it felt like the perfect golf game. Hotline Miami is, other than Smash Brothers, but maybe even more than Smash Brothers, it's, and I guess Civ 5, it's the game where nothing outside of that game exists. Like, it puts me in a vibe, in a mood where like the game sort of takes over my whole body, and I feel the music. It feels like I'm one with the game, like I'm in the Matrix or something like that. You know, even with its limited graphics and art style, it just puts me into that world, and it makes me feel a certain way, and you get in that rhythm and you get into that groove. And I'm not sure that any game does that better. Jackbox Party Pack, specifically number 7, which is my favorite, but it's just probably my favorite multiplayer game, outside of Smash Brothers anyway, where it's just led to so much laughter and enjoyment with my friends. Life is Strange is on that list. We've talked about that. That's 5. Mega Man, specifically 2 and 3. Metal Gear Solids, I've talked about. Metroid Fusion, I think, is a 5. I think that's another like perfect Metroidvania game. I really want to play Dread, but Fusion is incredible. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! I put in here as a 5. It's not a game I had as a kid. I didn't discover it until the Wii, but there's just something so engrossing about that game. It's really a puzzle game, but you don't see it as that. Like, you see it as you are this little dude fighting against these giant monsters. It gives me a similar sort of feeling that Shadow of the Colossus does, but very different. Shadow of the Colossus is also on this 5 out of 5 list, where I don't know, it like beating a boss in that game makes you feel like you can do anything, and there's just something special about it. I put Mortal Kombat 9 on here. Mortal Kombat was probably my most played fighting franchise growing up. It's gotten too realistic for me now. I kind of get squeamish with the fatalities and the X-ray attacks and things. 9 was probably on that line for me, but I like the narrative of it. I like how it reset everything, and I loved the gameplay of it. Passage, which I highlighted on Mind Games, which you can check over Roll with the Punches. But again, a one-person project, just such a minimal amount of a game that's able to invoke such wonderful questions and feelings in a person. I think it does the most with the least of any game that I've ever played. Persona 3, 4, and 5, all 5 out of 5. They're not perfect games by any means. I talk about Persona 4 and Mind Games, but just incredible narrative, characters, very solid gameplay. Ace Attorney, the original trilogy, just some of my favorite stories and characters in games, as well as music. The puzzles in those games can be a little hit or miss sometimes, but just amazing characters, amazing stories. Pinball Arcade, love pinball. I think Pinball Arcade is the best virtual pinball that there's ever been. It's unfortunate that they no longer have the license and it's done by Zen Pinball, which I do not like those physics at all. Portal 2, I think, is a 5 out of 5 for its single player and its co-op campaign. But the puzzle design is just top notch. A lot of really good narrative stuff in there. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, 5 out of 5, easy. It's just maybe the best 3D platformer ever made. I absolutely love and am astounded by that narrative. It's another one of those where it just feels so timeless. The two main characters feel real in a way that video game characters often don't. And a lot of that is because of far as reactions while you're playing the game. Just really, really interesting. And some of the best level design in games, some incredible music, incredible graphics, like just I don't know if 3D platforming can get better. Resident Evil 4 is probably my favorite game of all time. The feel of that gameplay is just maybe my favorite. Devil May Cry 3 might give it a run for its money, but there's just something so satisfying about the gunplay in that and where you shoot them. How you keep the spacing, when you use melee to conserve ammo, how you use the environment around you. The narrative is crazy and off the wall in sort of a so bad it's a good way for me. But the pacing of that game, the variety, and just that core gameplay loop, I think is maybe the best in gaming. RPG Maker I talked about before, give that a 5. Shadow of the Colossus and the remake, 5 stars. I played the remake, I think, on the channel, at least part of it, but just such a special game that was so inspiring to me. Just like I saw sort of my darker side and my depression and my anxiety in those Colossus. And it just related to me in a very special way, where I was fighting these things, but I really shouldn't have been fighting them all along. I was being tricked into fighting them, and that really wasn't the way to overcome them. But just, I don't think any game has ever felt grander in its scope and scale, where you just have these absolutely immense at the time creatures that felt like entire levels, all wrapped up in a single entity. An amazing achievement. StarCraft 2, I didn't put as much time into it as Aaron did, but I did play that single player and multiplayer. Really enjoyed it, and I super got into the competitive scene of it just as a spectator. So I watched a lot of Day 9, I watched a lot of Lag TV. So not only is it for the game itself and how much I loved the game, but also just the world that the game exposed me to was amazing. Street Fighter 4 is my favorite Street Fighter, and the only one I got even remotely good at. Not that I was good, but absolutely loved Street Fighter 4. Streets of Rage 2 is up there for me on my favorite beat 'em ups. It was sort of the defining game I feel like I had on the Genesis for me, where I would just play that over and over again, play it myself, play it with my sister. Incredible vibe, incredible style, incredible music. I really like Streets of Rage 4 as well. Super Mario Brothers 3 is probably my 5 out of 5, although I might put Galaxy on here, mainly just because of Eevee, and we played through that game so many times together. It might be my most beaten game, but 3 is probably still the pinnacle of Mario for me. It's, one of the games I had as a kid. I've played it thousands upon thousands of times, and it feels very special. Smash Brothers, obviously, we've talked about that. Team Fortress 2, I put hundreds of hours into. I think that was just an incredible multiplayer experience with classes. I always liked the idea of classes in multiplayer game. It's one of the reasons we were designing that mech game I talked about before, and I'll show off some stuff about that in a future stream. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 for the NES, something Manhattan. I can't remember the title of it exactly now, but that one's another one of my favorite beat 'em up games, and it's because of so you can use your special move in that by hitting A and B at the same time. And in most beat 'em up games, it takes part of your life away. But unlike most beat 'em up games, you can continue to use it even when you don't have the life to spend for it. So you can just use it infinitely at 1 health. So it introduces this awesome press your luck mechanic where it's like, well, I can get through this easy by using the special ability. It's going to take down my health. And now that I'm at 1, I just use it over and over again. I love that mechanic. Tetris, specifically DS, although I really love NES Tetris as well. I think Tetris is the perfect video game. It's the game we should show aliens whenever they come. Like, I think it's universal. The idea of like humans looking for and completing patterns. I think Tetris scratches that itch from the very like lowest levels of our brain. I don't think any game is more perfect than Tetris. The Curse of Monkey Island, absolutely amazing graphics, real fun story, hilarious, some really good puzzle design. One of my favorite point and clicks. The Legend of Zelda for the NES. What more is there to say about the original Legend of Zelda? The Missing, I've talked about a ton. Witcher 3, I played on the channel. Time Splitters 2 and 3 are both 5 stars for me, mainly because of the co-op campaigns. Aaron and I just played those to death. We also played the multiplayer a lot as well. But really funny, solid gameplay, amazing multiplayer. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 and Underground, I think, are both 5 stars. Again, I'm not a huge sports game fan, but those games just really clicked with me. And I loved the loop of like, you have a minute in this world, do as much of these objectives as you can, and just rinse and repeat, right? There was always so much to explore. There was such a high level cap for the skill in that, but you could still enjoy it being bad at it as well to sort of get you up there. Towerfall Ascension, one of my favorite multiplayer games. So many good memories of playing that locally with my friends. Unreal Tournament 2004 was like my main LAN party game. I played a good amount of Halo, but Unreal Tournament 2004 was the one that I really enjoyed and put a lot of time into. Valkyria Chronicles, I love the story and the characters. You can lose characters in that and they're gone forever. The gameplay is an interesting mix of turn-based strategy, but real-time action, where you give the orders and then you like move and fire as the character. Really interesting. And Yakuza 0, I think, is the only Yakuza so far for me that's 5 stars. Story, characters, amazing. Gameplay, not my favorite, but still very good. But it gets me through in order to enjoy the story, the characters, and even the side quests. So yeah, those so far are all the games that I've done 5 out of 5. Now I haven't rated every game on this list, so there's others that I might have missed as well. But for now, that's where it's at. I have played Papers, Please. Very good. A very good game. All right, I didn't look at chat for any of that, so I have played Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's not a 5 out of 5 for me. Overstayed its welcome. That's my biggest issue with it, I think. But I really like it a lot, even still. Those are my favorite 2 and X. I assume you're either talking about Final Fantasy or Mega Man, but I really like Mega Man 10. Sorry, Final Fantasy 10. I don't like Mega Man X, surprisingly enough. I have not played Xenoblade yet, but it's on the list. Thanks for the sub, Mash Brat. So I played the demo of Manhunt, the first one, when I was, a teenager or whatever. But I never played the full game. I really don't have any interest in playing it. It didn't seem like my kind of jam. There's a Like a Dragon show coming later this year. That's exciting. I gotta get there though. Got a lot more Yakuza to play. All right. Well, I think that's gonna probably do it for me. We got a surprise video game ranking stream as part of this. Always happy to talk about video games. But yeah, next week is going to be WaveCon, which should be a good time. Excited to host some Reactor Feud. Excited to torture people with the Hint Hunt. Play some Smash Brothers. Maybe play some board games. Should be a good time. And then 2 weeks off after that. So probably won't see you for a few weeks. Blind Wave videos will continue to come out. We film to get ahead, so you'll still be seeing those. No podcast next week. No group stream next week either. I believe Dark Souls is still happening next week. Although I want to say it's on Monday. I feel like it's on a different day than normal. But I honestly am not sure. So keep an eye on X/Twitter. I think it's Monday. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I am all talked out. I hope you have a wonderful couple weeks. Get out there, roll with the punches. It's a good opportunity to check out some of the old streams if you missed them. There's a lot of videos over there on Roll with the Punches YouTube channel. So it's Tuesday, says Dora. All right, good. I'm hoping Aaron dies 30 times. I think he's like 30 away from Neil Breen, which would be a wonderful treat to be able to react to that once we get back from vacation. So here's hoping. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good couple weeks. Goodbye.